Hey, what's up, guys? Blaine Duncan here from Halloween Lives, a podcast of Michael Myers. And guess who's back? He's back again. That's what Eminem said. And it's my brother. It's Austin. What's going on, dude? Welcome back to the show.
Dude, you did great last week, and
Thank you.
I was glad you could feel a little bit of that pain that I felt a couple weeks ago.
Man, yeah. I mean, I think we make a good tandem. We're a good duo, and I feel like, yes, the podcast will go on if one of us isn't around, but it is a long time to talk by yourself. So, yeah, it's great to have you back on the show. And, like I said last week, and like you said, on the two episodes that I wasn't able to be here, the show must go on, and we can find a way to pull it off, but it's obviously much more enjoyable for the two of us to be able to banter back and forth and talk. So yeah, man, it's awesome to get you back on the show. And dude, you know what's exciting? We are only 3 episodes. Is it 3 episodes away from our live 25? I mean, this is episode 23. So technically, however you want to look at it, 2 or 3 episodes, right? We are only a few weeks away from our live 25 episode, and we have gotten a ton of people who want to jump into that with us. There's going to be a chat going on. There's going to be people who are going to be joining us. So if you were, and here's the deal, we are going to try to get to as many people as possible. You're going to, if you're interested in being on the show with us for even a couple minutes, you got to send us a DM. Let us know what your email address is. We'll get you the link for the show. We're doing this live 25 podcast. It's our 25th show, and we're going to do it live. And dude, I'm super, super pumped about that.
Yeah, no. And we've been on the back end. We've been gearing up, getting the right stuff ready, trying to figure out how to make this thing go as smooth as possible. I'm looking forward to it. I'm hoping it turns out as good as it is in our heads right now, because it sounds like it's going to be a awesome show and a good way to kind of connect with you guys. And yeah, I don't know, I'm looking forward to it. 2 weeks away. And yeah, we got a lot of fun stuff down the pipeline here, and I think that's a good way to kind of kick that all off.
Yeah. No, exactly. And the other thing too is we're going to really use this to sort of gauge how we do more live shows moving forward. I think that's something that kind of the next step for us is we want to start doing more of those live streams, live shows, so that we can interact with more people out there like us that want to do or want to listen to us on more of kind of that live basis. So as opposed to, this, you're hearing it through, it's a recording, right? We're recording it the week of. So yeah, I think there's going to be a lot more coming forward down the pipe, like you said. But today's episode is one that, honestly, I've been looking forward to this episode for a long time, because we're going to be talking about Halloween 3, the Season of the Witch. And dude, this movie, I was thinking about this earlier. So this movie is really, in many ways, there are so many parallels to Halloween Ends. And I don't mean like the movies are the same in any way, but just the divisiveness and the way that people either love it or hate it. And we've kind of speculated that we think at some point down the road, there's a lot of people who are going to learn to appreciate Halloween Ends, much like they have learned to appreciate Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. But what do you think about that? I mean, do you kind of see that as these sort of parallels between the two films in some way?
Well, I think back to growing up, you and I would always, I've talked about this before. We'd skip Friday the 13th Part 5, and we'd skip Halloween 3 because our guy wasn't in it,
Right.
And I think for a lot of people, even Brad Lurie's talked about showing up to the theater, and all of a sudden Michael's not there. You're halfway through the movie and you haven't seen Michael Myers yet. Right. It's definitely one of those things where on paper, or when I'm telling somebody who's a casual fan of the franchise that, yeah, Michael Myers isn't even in this one. Right. I think a lot of people kind of turn away, and I know, and what I'm saying is we did too. It wasn't until about 10 years ago that we sat down and watched it and gave it just a fair, honest shot as its own thing, which is what it was intended to be. That we got to kind of realize how awesome this movie is. And I'm so glad this is our first like deep dive on a singular film. And I'm so glad it's this one. It's clearly inspired our whole show. I mean, our intro is right from Season of the Witch. And I don't know, man. It's definitely one of those things where in the last 10 years, people have really kind of turned around on it. I wish I could say I was one of the people that loved it from the beginning. But yeah, it's kind of this new gem for me, and I'm pumped to talk about it for this whole podcast.
So I watch this movie consistently every October, but even more, kind of taking that a little bit deeper, I have gotten into the habit that I watch it October 30th every year. I don't know why. I have watched it on Halloween before. For a while, I would watch, like, my nighttime routine was to watch 78, then H2, and then, Halloween 3 in that order. But then I think it was just one of those deals where I wanted to kind of move things around a little bit. But I now watch Halloween 3 on October 30th consistently year after year after year. And I guess my first question to you is when do you watch it? And I'm assuming that you watch it religiously like I do every single year, right? But one thing that I wanted to point out is how when that movie ends, when you get the stop it thing, and then it goes to that Halloween 3 sort of music, that closing song that you get, dude, do you know what that means for me? That means it's Halloween. That means it's the day of Halloween, because that's the last movie that I watch before the actual day of Halloween. So as that culmination of that scene happens, I'm just kind of like, give it to me, baby. I want it. This is Halloween. It's Halloween is here. And so then I, usually obviously I go to bed, wake up in the morning, and it's actually Halloween. But when do you watch this movie? I mean, are you watching this consistently year after year?
Yeah, absolutely. And after hearing that explanation, I might need to switch to doing it on the 30th, because that sounds badass.
Stick with me, kid. Stick with me.
So I watched it actually on the 1st of October. For a long time, I did, because we do the same thing where we don't watch the original or the first two until Halloween day or Halloween night. And because I'm such a freak for this thing and I need it sooner, I've always watched Rob Zombie's Halloween, the first one, on October 1st to just kind of
dude.
It's a perfect way to start it, but
it is.
The last couple years, I've been doing Halloween 3 on the same day, usually, just because that movie really gets me in like the spirit of Halloween. I mean, you get some of your best like real fall, October spooky shots in that film. I think the trick-or-treating scene in that movie, the cinematography there, it puts me in my Halloween mood, man. It is the shit. I don't know. So I usually watch it on October 1st, or I have been, but you put up a really good argument. I think that last scene with Dan on the phone talking to, I don't know, the
operator. Yeah. Right. Yeah. The operator who's going to be able to somehow turn off all TV throughout the nation or the world or whatever he's got going on. Yeah. So let's start out at the beginning then. So we obviously, we have talked about that we're fans of this film. We know we're fans of this film. I think most people have become fans of this film. You don't hear too much griping and too much bitching about it in today's day and age. I mean, I think people have just come to accept it. But let's go back to this idea that when they made Halloween 3, that was really the end of Michael Myers as they knew it at that time, right?
For John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, absolutely.
Yeah, that was supposed to Halloween 2. Michael was dead. Michael burned up. He was dead. Michael was not coming back. And I'm sure a lot of people know this by now, but we'll just go ahead and say it again, that the series, the idea is to now create new Halloween themed films, and that every film will be a little bit different, or every film will be different, and not necessarily with the same characters, the same storyline, or anything like that. So they said, okay, well, let's start now. We've killed off Michael. Let's move into this new era, kind of the dawn of the computer age. They wanted to incorporate that, which you obviously see in the opening with the pumpkin and how that, like you mentioned, that inspired our opening as well. And so you got this film, and the initial reaction was much like you mentioned with Brad Loree. He was like, "What in the frick is this? Like, where's Michael?" That was the question. Where's Michael? And that kind of goes back to the parallel with Halloween Ends, is people like, "Where's Michael? Why isn't he in this film more?" But dude, people, this was obviously before you and I were around. We weren't born, at that point. But just reading about the reaction and the fan reaction and seeing what people said at that time, like, dude, people hated this movie.
Yeah, and you hear lots of stories about that with Halloween 4, how they had to put Return of Michael Myers in the title because otherwise they didn't think people were going to show up. People were so disappointed that this character that they had built, that I think John and Deborah kind of wanted to move on with even after the first one, but after the first one's success, they kind of had to wrap up that story. But they really wanted to get back to this idea of this kind of Twilight Zone anthology series where every Halloween there's kind of a new story that has nothing to do with the last one and nothing to do with the first one or the one to come after it. And we've talked a lot about how, damn, I wish that was a real thing, but it also probably would have led to like direct to DVD releases and this, that, and the other. But it's cool because this is the first, or I guess we're with Halloween 3, you're really getting back to the idea that made the first one so special. And that's just them exploring new ideas and new themes. And yeah, Halloween 3, even at the baseline of being a slasher film, is not a slasher film. It's really more of this kind of mystery thriller compared to the cat and mouse slasher horror of Halloween 1978. It's so stark in its difference that I think if I was showing up to the theaters, I would have been completely shocked too. And much like what we've talked about with Halloween Ends, I think if you go into a movie expecting something, and it doesn't give you what you thought it was going to deliver, yeah, you're going to walk out of that theater pissed, man. And right. I don't blame anybody who went into that theater and walked out in 1982, 3.
Mm-hmm,
walking out with bad feelings about the film. But I do think that, like, once you give this film a chance, man, it is the most 80s psychological what the hell moment horror movie of all time. I love this film. And you do have a lot of the cast from the first film in this too as well. But yeah, I think it's up there. I mean, it was super high up on both of our lists.
Yeah, it's one of those movies that and they've beat this idea to death that if they had just called it Season of the Witch, people would have loved it right off the bat. Probably would have been a classic horror film that immediately was just really well received. But what they did, they screwed up, and I think they know they screwed up now, right? Hindsight 2020, they know they screwed up. You talked about some of the scenes in that film and really making you feel like it's Halloween. 100%. There is a song that is called Chariots of Pumpkins that is part of that soundtrack, which we should talk about the soundtrack. Like, we could do a whole show damn near on the Halloween 3 soundtrack because the soundtrack itself is amazing. But there is a song, Chariots of Pumpkins, and I'm sure a lot of people who are listening have probably heard it. You would recognize it the second you started hearing the first few notes. Like, dude, when I hear that song, it is freaking go time, bro. Like, it doesn't matter. I could listen to that song in December. I could listen to it on Christmas Day, and I'd be like, I'm ready for Halloween. Give me Halloween. I need some Halloween. And I think you're right. Like, they did such a good job outside of, obviously they did a great job in 78. They did a great job in H4 of capturing like the Halloween vibe and Halloween, feel. They did such an awesome job in H3 as well. Now, it was very green. You didn't have like a ton of like the, autumn leaves and things like that, but it was still the way that they shot it, much like 78, where you had similar circumstances and the time that they were filming it clearly wasn't during the fall. They found a way, that movie magic, to make this thing feel like it starts out on like October 24th, or I think that's the date, or I don't remember what the exact date, and then they have this build up to Halloween, which I also love, because I don't think we've gotten in any other Halloween film. I don't think they've actually gone back that far before Halloween. And I'm just trying to think through my head here. Maybe you could look at Rob Zombie's Halloween would have, but otherwise we're usually coming in October 29th, October 30th, whatever that is. And then you're being introduced and things just happen very, very quickly from there. But you have this slow buildup, and they don't waste a lot of time in this film getting to the action. It immediately starts out with the Grimbridge character. He's, running away from this car that's chasing him, who we later learned that it's these, robot guys, and he's got the orange pumpkin mask. And I have to say, and spoiler warning, if you've not seen Halloween 3, you're going to want to shut this off, because we're going to be spoiling the shit out of this thing. But when he is in the hospital, and that robot dude jams his fingers into his eye sockets and pulls up on his nose, dude, that every time I watch that, and horror shit and like blood and guts doesn't bother me at all, but I watch it, I'm like, ugh, damn, whoever thought of that kill, that was gnarly. And then you see like his toes like spread out, and that's a gnarly kill scene. So I love the fact that there's not really a lot of downtime. I mean, they do a really good job, I think, of building up the characters, but you jump into an action scene immediately in that chase scene where, he's running around, and yeah, dude, I love the way that the whole thing opens up.
Yeah, I think that opening, so you've got that character running with the mask. He gets hit, he has the wherewithal to pull the car to crunch the robot. And that's your first technical kill. And if you're looking at it, you might go, oh, the kills in this movie are going to be pretty tame. Immediately after that, he's getting his eyes pulled. There's decapitations in this movie. There's child death. Like the kills in this movie are incredible. The practical effects are awesome.
And actually, you real quick. So when we did our like top 10 favorite kills from the franchise, the Marge Gutman scene where she's, dicking around with the little chip and it blows her face off. And then she gets, like the bug crawling on her face. That ended up on my list because that is a gnarly scene. So you're right. The death scenes in this film are some of the best that we really get throughout the entire franchise.
Dude, and Buddy Jr. was on mine. Obviously watching the screen and his face melts and enough to where like a snake comes out and kills his dad.
Spiders and bugs and shit all over.
It's so like grotesque and kind of over the top. I love this film. But yeah, so I was thinking of when you were talking about that scene of him in the hospital, when he looks up at Dan Chalice and the doctor, and he's like, they're gonna kill us all. I love that scene. And it kind of sets up the mystery of like, okay, what's happening? And I love that they just kind of throw you into it, because you really don't understand what's going on until much later in the film. They're doing autopsies and they're only finding bits of plastic and metal. And then eventually
the dude lights himself on fire. Like the robot guy goes out to the car and lights himself on fire, and then the thing explodes. And which is again a great kill scene, right? It's a robot, but it's a great scene.
Well, yeah, you almost think they're like part of some serious cult where it's like, okay, I've done my mission. I'm gonna kill myself now. Right. But it is brutal and it is awesome. Obviously you got to talk about the character of Dan Chalice, the man that's guiding us through this whole mission, the world's most drunk detective, and the man, the myth, the mustache, as you have described him.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Kind of a totally different character leading this story than a Laurie Strode.
Yeah. I mean, he's, Dan Chalice is like, obviously he's a doctor, right? He's working at the hospital, but he's sort of this like ladies man. You know, he's hitting on, you know, the nurses, and he's hitting on the chick who's digging through the, you know, the robot pieces later on in the film. He obviously has, you know, Ellie Grimbridge. He ends up laying her down like 3 hours after meeting her. You know, it's just, they make Tom Atkins, who's, you know, like playing the character of Dr. Chalice, you know, they make him seem like he's just this schmoozer and this ladies man. And, you know, like one of my favorite lines, because it's so cheesy, but it's just a fantastic scene. So Ellie's getting out of the shower and she's like wrapped in a towel. Or maybe she might have on, maybe, I don't remember if she's in a towel or if she's in like her black, whatever thing that she's wearing. But he's like, she's like, where do you want me to sleep, Dr. Chalice? And it's just like, I feel like I'm getting ready to watch some like really bad 70s porno or something. Yeah. You know, that was just like, that was the line. And then, you know, they throw down and then you get, you know, his bare ass later on when he gets up and he pulls his pants up. And, but Dan, the character Dan Chalice, he's a likable guy, even though he's like this deadbeat dad. You know, he's sort of like, he's always a day late and $1 short. He tries to buy the kids Halloween masks and they're like, Mom already bought us masks. And he's like, you know, he's trying to, they're having marital problems. And yeah, it's just, he's, you know, calling her and telling her that, you know, he's not coming home or whatever it is. He's got to go away for a few days. He's got the 6-pack with him, drinking his Miller Lite, which is just hysterical to me. But yeah, I love the character of Dan Chalice, and you're right, very different than any other character that we had really seen up until this point in time in the Halloween franchise. You know, because there was a part of him that was obviously very serious, but then he was kind of this, you know, kind of comical character without trying to be funny at the same time, you know? And, yeah, he was a great character. And like I said, just the fact that he, you know, he hooks up with Ellie, you know, who's, you know, he's even asking her like, how old are you? And it's like, dude, what, you just laying down anything that walks, you just try, you know, I mean, it's so funny, but great character.
He is definitely, you know, hide your daughters, whatever. Right. He's grabbing nurses' asses. He's doing it all.
Yeah.
And yeah, Ellie, you know, what, like a day after losing her father is ready just to go.
She's no time like the present,
I guess. But yeah, we just talked about Ellie a couple episodes ago as well. Obviously, she's got her motivations for wanting to figure out what's going on, why her father was killed, what this mystery is. And so you end up going out to Santa Mira, California, to Silver Shamrock's headquarters.
Right.
And you meet some pretty important characters there. You got Cochran, who's the head honcho of the whole thing. And he's you know, he's given them a tour, but he's also given the tour to the head of sales or their regional sales leader. And you know, there's all these hints that you get. Maybe you picked up on them better than I did, but I definitely see more of the hints watching through now. They take the masks and you kind of see the whole thing, and then they're like, and then there's this last bit they got to do to him, and she goes, what's the last bit? You know, I forget what the line is, but
it's final processing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, you come later to figure out that they are installing a piece of Stonehenge.
Stonehenge.
If you thought at all that was what this movie was going to be about, I applaud you, because that is the weirdest, most random thing. But, you know, in that first scene, the guy that brings in Ellie's father is watching TV, and they're talking about how somebody stole a piece of Stonehenge.
Right. Which, if you're not paying attention to that, like, and I probably didn't even notice it the first time or two that I watched it, but yeah, once you're paying attention, you're like, oh shit, they talked about that on the TV.
If you missed that fact, yeah, walking into Silver Shamrock later in the film and seeing a stone
giant rock,
you're gonna be confused how that got there. And even in the movie, they say, like, I think Cochran's like, you want to know how I got this here? It was crazy. And then they don't say anything else about it.
Right.
But yeah, it's just the most weird, wacky things. So talk a little bit about Santa Mira. Talk a little bit about Silver Shamrock.
Yeah. So, well, the first thing that I want to say is, and you don't even know this, but my love of Halloween 3, I have always wanted to go to. So the town is Lolita, California. That's the real name of the town that they filmed in. And the building that the Silver Shamrock factory is it's still standing. However, I'm sure a lot of people know this. They just had an earthquake up there within like the last year, and like damn near half the roof caved in, and it's going to get torn down. I mean, I've seen pictures of it online. You do have some fans and stuff that are going up there and grabbing bricks. But dude, with us going out to Halloween 45, I was like, man, what are the chances that we could take a road trip to go to Lolita and get a brick, just see the town, because it's a creepy ass town. There's something about the town. It's very quiet. Like people are like staring out their windows as the cars are driving by, and it's just a super creepy town. But I looked into how far it is, dude. It's like 8 hours. It's like an 8 hour drive from LA. So yeah, that sucks, because it's like we're so close yet so far. We're only going to be out there for a couple days. If we had a third day, dude, if you were like, hey, I don't want to go, I'd be like, well, you can ride in the trunk, because we're going to Lolita, because I want to see this town, because the town looks exactly like it did in the film. Nothing has changed, which is just crazy. And the fact that they're going to knock that building down, which is just a piece of Halloween franchise history, that sucks. So I don't know, man. We might never get that opportunity to see it. But if anybody out there is going and you're watching this right now and you head up to Lolita, dude, I will pay you to get me a brick, and I'm sure Austin would too. We'd love to have a piece of that building, because it's just, and freaking put it on this display here. But great town, super cool town. Yeah, Silver Shamrock. You've got the big logo up on the building, and then you get introduced to this character of Connell Cochran, who is he's such a that dude did, and I don't know the actor's name. Again, don't sue me. I don't know all these actors' names, but he did such an awesome job with that role. And he was so believable as sort of this well-to-do businessman who was, he was running his business, but he was also a man of the people. And Buddy's order got mixed up. So he was like, I'm sending you all these masks on the house, or whatever the hell he says. But Connell Cochran has one of my absolute favorite scenes, I guess, throughout the entire franchise. And that's the scene where Dan Chalice has been captured. He's sitting in the chair, and I think this is when it happens, but everybody will know what I'm talking about here in a second. But it's the scene when Connell Cochran is like, the hills ran red with the blood, and fires burned across, the countryside. And I mean, he's telling this whole story, and it's like, he's telling the story of Halloween and how Halloween started with these, Celtic rituals and things like that. And it's just such a creepy scene. And kind of going back to what I said earlier about when Halloween 3 ends, and I get that music, it's like, okay, I know now I know it's Halloween Day in my world, at least, right? That's the last movie that I watched on October 30th, and it's now going to be Halloween. But him giving that speech about the history of Halloween and how Halloween came to be, and Samhain, and all that good stuff, that really gets me jazzed up for Halloween, because it's like that's the real history, and he's almost giving like a history lesson. But the way he says that and delivers those lines, absolutely fantastic. And I've often thought about this, and I do want to talk about this before this episode is over. But if they were to remake this film, who could they get to fill in that role? And dude, that would be tough. Like it's the way that I look at it is it's very similar to Dr. Loomis. I don't know. I don't think Malcolm did an awesome job in Rob Zombie's Halloween 1 and 2, but it's not the same, right? It's not the same Loomis. We don't get that same fire and that same intensity, and you don't. So if they were to remake Halloween 3, I don't know who they could get to play that role. And I'm sure there's somebody out there, and somebody probably do a fine job with it. But I think Dan Chalice, or the character of Dan Chalice, could be replaced in some ways. I mean, I know we talked about that with our our tier list 2 weeks ago that, it would be tough to replace Tom Atkins because he's Tom Atkins, but you could do it if you absolutely had to. Connell Cochran's character, he's so well done. I think that would be tough to do.
Yeah, the only actor I can think of that I think would crush it would be like a William Dafoe. I think he would be badass. I don't know if you probably haven't seen the newest Spider-Man movie, but they brought him back in for that, and he kind of plays this like nice, sweet character, but then on the flip of a dime, he becomes kind of the creepy ass Willem Dafoe that we all know. But yeah, no, absolutely a super hard job to recast a guy like that. And yeah, I think he knocks it out of the park with this role, because I can't imagine on script that this seemed like it was going to be, I don't know, maybe they did see the magic that it would be. But it is, when you tell people the plot of what Halloween 3 really is, it's an evil mask maker who uses pieces of Stonehenge along with his robot army to kill the kids of the world. Right. It's kind of this weird story, but like they sold that they sold that to the Akkads, you know what I mean, like to Mustafa Akkad. They're like, just follow me on this for a second. Picture yourself in Northern California. There's a mask making studio, and guess what they attach to these masks? Pieces of Stonehenge, and there's witchcraft and transportation, and I'm sure he was like, what? Oh, okay. You know what I mean? But obviously it worked. I mean, we're here talking about this movie, but it's like I wonder how that conversation went down. Like, okay, wait, we went from a babysitter murderer to teleportation, witchcraft, computers, Stonehenge. What are we doing here? You know what I mean? But it worked. Right. They did it. So kudos to them, I guess. And that's probably another reason that people walked out of that movie like, what the hell? Because the first one, there's no supernatural elements there. It's all could very much happen in the real world. And then you've got Halloween 3 that is just so, fantasy based and so supernatural. Yeah. I don't know, man. That's a tough pitch to the Akkads.
Yeah. Yeah. But you know what? Here's one thing I will say is the masks, and you guys can see I've got the masks right.
You got them on your shirt too.
I'm wearing my H3 shirt. I can't forget about H3. So the masks in this movie are awesome. Don Post Studios masks, right? And now if you have one of the originals, like they're worth thousands of dollars, and these are Trick or Treat Studios masks, which are great. They basically the same thing, right? They're just not original, but I love these masks. They're classic Halloween masks, like a skull, a witch, a pumpkin. There's nothing like super scary. There's nothing gory, anything like that. So I'm glad that they used those masks and they brought those masks back in the new trilogy because it really sort of, it's obviously an homage to Halloween 3, but it's cool to see them being brought back again. But I want to talk specifically about a remake, because if they were to do a remake, and I want to find out what your opinion is, whether you're up for a remake or not on this film, but if they did, dude, I don't think you can touch the masks, or if you do, they have to look very, very similar. I'm not saying you couldn't change them a little bit to kind of make them your own, but you would have to go with the skull, the witch, and the pumpkin. Like if they came up with some crazy ass design, like, oh, there's a zombie and there's a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, like that doesn't work. You got to stick with those three because they're so iconic. We've seen them in other movies like The Guest, which is a great freaking movie. If you've not seen The Guest, you get the witch, the pumpkin, and the skull, like big cardboard cutout kind of things at the dance scene, and just a fantastic look. But Let's talk about if they did a remake. And now Rob Zombie was going to make Halloween 3, but it wasn't going to be necessarily, as far as I'm aware, a remake of Halloween 3. It was going to be Halloween 3D. So let's talk about it. Would you be up for a Halloween 3 remake?
So I'll say this. I think to a degree they almost did already. The first season of Stranger Things, I think, is incredibly inspired by Season of the Witch. down to kind of the head honcho, kind of looking the same way. I forget what the doctor's name. I think it's Dr. Brenner in Stranger Things is kind of the leader behind the whole thing. But it's a small town in, I believe, Hawkins, Indiana is where they're at in that show. And there's something strange going on in this factory. It's something very similar to that. But yes, I would be down if they were to do a full-fledged remake of it, or almost kind of a reimagining. I think a lot of the story elements would probably need to be changed to be a bit more believable in 2023 or 24. But yeah, man, I think if they did a season of The Witch, you got to stick with the classic masks. I agree. You can't start diving out there with a Frankenstein mask or a zombie mask or anything like that. But I think the story is so rich and so great that it could capture a whole new audience. And I think the fact that they were kind of willing to, in Halloween 78, they didn't really even want to show blood. So in Halloween 3 to go, not only are we going to show blood, we're going to show decapitations. And the whole story is about killing all the trick-or-treat age children in America or the world or whatever. I think that's sort of like a crazy enough plot or like a dark enough plot that people would feel like, oh, this has got to be somebody post, the last 5 years of craziness clearly came up with this. But yeah, no, I think this movie is due for a reboot. If that's what they wanted to do in the interim between, whatever happens to Michael Myers as a character, I would be ecstatic. I think that's a great option to kind of do in the middle here. The only problem is, who are you going to find to replace Tom Atkins? Who's going to be the new Tom?
Yeah, you'd have to have somebody with a badass mustache. That's all I know. And here's the deal, man. I agree with everything that you just said. I as well would be in for or interested in a remake or a reboot. Probably a reboot is a better word, just because even though it's a remake, but I mean, I would want somebody to make it their own, but still follow sort of the same, stay within the box, right? I mean, don't go too crazy. Stay within the box. And I hesitate to say this because I shit on his films so much, but I would have actually been kind of interested to see how Rob Zombie would have done with this, just because, it's got witchcraft in it. It's a more gory film. Rob Zombie is really good at creating like piece of shit characters, and I'm sure he could have found some real dirtball looking dude to be Tom Atkins or the Dan Chalice character. I would have been okay with it. Now, when I say that, I'm very hesitant to say that because I would probably, if that had happened, I'd probably be sitting here today shitting on the Halloween 3 remake, because I'm not a huge fan of the 2007 or 2009 Halloween films that Rob Zombie did. They're all part of the franchise. I love them. They're like my children. I love them all, but there's some that I like better. I don't know that I would have liked it once it was done. But if there was anybody out there that I wouldn't mind seeing take a crack at it, I could maybe see Rob Zombie doing it. And I think it would be interesting, a really cool idea. I think you're 100% right. And it's probably something that we've talked about. I haven't seen Stranger Things, at least that first season, since it came out, 5 or 6 years ago. But I don't know that I don't know that I've ever thought about that in a way that you just described it, that it's very similar. Like, I mean, it's a very similar storyline. It's just, you're talking about like aliens versus witchcraft. And, but it's obviously more driven by kids than it is, even though you've got the, I forget what the main
dude, you even got a guy with a freaking mustache. Dave Harbour could be Tom Atkins. Holy shit.
Dude, that's a great idea. That he could be. That is a great idea. Let's remake this movie. Let's you and I do it.
If shit happens now, I want to check.
Yeah, we're suing. We're suing if he gets cast as the new Dan Chalice.
Dude,
we're gonna have an awesome studio if that happens, because it's gonna frickin' be just paid for by Warner Brothers or whoever the hell. makes the movie. Yeah, dude, I never thought about that, but that's a really good point, that it's, that the similarities are they're there. So in a way, yeah, they've kind of almost done a little bit of that story, but I would love to see if somebody did reboot it or remake it, do exactly what Stranger Things did, take it back to the 80s, and give it that sort of new technology feel. And, I say that sort of tongue in cheek because, yes, I would want them to do a little bit different with it. I'd want them to make it their own. But I think if you lost that 80s synthesizer, vibe that this film gives off, I think it would lose a little bit of its appeal, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. But as I think of it, I'm like, oh, people would shit on it. They'd be like, oh, this is a Stranger Things ripoff. And it's like, no, this is what made Stranger Things.
Right.
But yeah, no, absolutely. If this movie didn't have the piercing synths, and that incredible intro, like I would want a kind of an even deeper version of that intro. I mean, it's incredible. I love everything about that film aesthetically. Right. That I think that plays a huge part into why that film is cherished by Halloween fans across the board now. And a lot of it is that nostalgia factor. And yeah, man, tap into that. Get Dave Harbour with a mustache. I'm in, man.
That would be sweet. Yeah, I think that would be really cool. And if they announce that as sort of that stopgap, like we've talked about, what's next for the Halloween franchise, right? I mean, are they going to just roll right into a new Michael Myers movie? Is there going to be a TV show? Dude, doing a remake of Halloween 3, and just don't call it Halloween. Do Season of the Witch. I mean, you learn from your mistakes. Call it Season of the Witch, and make that, because that could be really that could suffice a lot of Halloween fans if you were doing that. So, Malik Akkad, I know you watch this show. What's up, buddy? Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Yep. Let's get together soon for drinks. I think you should remake this film. Strongly consider it. And if you want to cast us as executive producers or something, or producers, I can check my calendar, but I'm probably free. So yeah, I'm all for a remake, but you got to use the same masks. And if they did it, I'd be happy as hell. One thing I did want to mention though, and I know I talked a little bit about this earlier, but the soundtrack is phenomenal. Probably, outside of the original 78, it's my favorite soundtrack in the entire franchise.
Gotta be. Yeah. I mean, it's so distinct and different from all the other ones. When I think of that soundtrack now, you had it as your ringtone for a really long time.
I did. Yeah, that's right.
And now when I hear that, like it takes me back to that. And it's just like that soundtrack. If you play that when you're in a car, driving in the fall, or just, I used to, in college, when I'd walk home from class, first of all, I put on Laurie's theme to feel like I was getting stalked, which, for a lot of people is reality. And I'm sorry about that. But for me, I got to pretend. But I did that. And then I listened to, the Halloween 3 theme, just to like, dude, even between classes, I wanted to feel like I was part of this universe, man. I freaking love this movie. I love this soundtrack, and it definitely takes the whole movie up a huge notch.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're totally right. And it's funny because I have on my phone through iTunes, I have like a Halloween, I'll call it a mix, right? I mean, it's a Halloween album, but it's made up of a whole bunch of different songs. And I would say probably at least 5 or 6 songs off of that soundtrack make up this, this mix that I have, which just says a lot about it. And Alan Howarth, did the soundtrack for this, and he did a phenomenal job. Would love to get him on the show sometime too, to talk about like where his creative inspiration came from to do these films. And especially, once, and I know John Carpenter created the Halloween theme, but Alan Howarth was then able to work off of that and create for some of the sequels, create music. But like, how did he just capture that like digital, new dawn or dawn of the computer era, digital synthesizer. Like he just captured it so well. And that's what I'd love to ask him,
And it's really like distinct because the piano that you get with like Michael Myers, it's kind of it's symbolic of the movies. Piano is a natural thing that's been around for a long time. It's very organic. It's acoustic. But this film and the enemies in this film, the horror, the evil in this film is very tech based and has never been alive. And neither is the music. I mean, it's pure electronic notes hitting you. It's badass. I'm not a music theory major, but somebody could go into that way deeper than me there. It's really cool. And it's kind of some of the most frightening parts of that film are due to that incredible score. And yeah, wouldn't have it any other way. I don't think it works any other way.
For sure. And to kind of wrap up this whole discussion, and obviously we'll do a much deeper dive. We're going to do a commentary on this film in the future, but sort of to wrap up this whole idea of, hey, they were going to try something different and get away from Michael Myers. I was thinking about this today, and in a way, they have kind of done that throughout this franchise in the sense that it has really, truly, as we call it, sort of a choose your own adventure of the Halloween Michael Myers saga. So even though Halloween 3 Season of the Witch is the only movie that they did that doesn't have Michael in it, even though it does in the commercial, yes, we know that. Even though it doesn't have Michael Myers in it, it's the only movie that is sort of off in its own little world. If you look at all the different timelines, right? It's the only one that's off in its own world. But like I said, in a way, they have kind of done that in a way where things are very different. It is that choose your own adventure style. And that sort of dawned on me today. And I might not be explaining that well enough, but that is kind of how this has turned out, where it's not the same story. It's not the same storyline. It's not the same characters. You're getting, yes, the same main focal point of the serial killer is Michael Myers, and it all revolves around Halloween. But there's so many different variations of the story, and that you kind of, again, can choose your own adventure. So that dawned on me a little bit when I was thinking about that earlier today, about what they were trying to do, and then really what the series has become over the years.
Yeah, I've never thought about it that way, that it has almost become an anthology, but there is sort of a through line to follow. That's really interesting to think about. And I hope John Carpenter thinks about it that way, looking back on, what his creation has become. And, obviously the hate this film got initially was because he created such a incredible character with Michael Myers. There's no us doing this without that character. Right. And it because that character was so incredible, people just wanted more of that. And, a couple of years later, they gave the people what they wanted. It's great. But before we go, I do want to dive just a little bit into that final scene, because I think it's one of the best endings in any horror movie, because you're left on a cliffhanger that to this day, 30, 40 years later, has not been resolved. Right. And I love Dan on the phone, like, you gotta stop it. And as he's doing it, that music is just getting louder and louder. And then it cuts to black, and it's Halloween, man. I mean, it's what a spooky way to end the film. You don't know whether or not tons of kids just became,
vaporized and Yep. Well, what's your thoughts? Did he save the day, or did every kid who was wearing that mask watching the horror-thon, did they die? What's your theory?
I maybe it's screwed up of me, but I think it kind of leaves more of that dread feeling when you walk away. And to think he didn't save everyone. Obviously he got one channel to turn off. I don't know how many channels there were on an analog television in 1982. let's go with 5, at least in this universe. So we saved, a fifth of kids, but those kids were at the dial switching to the next channel if their TV went out. So
right. Yep.
I don't know. I think for me, it hits a little harder if he just didn't do it in time.
Right. Yep. And I kind of agree. That's sort of how I picture it too, that there was no way that he was able to get all that done so quickly. Right. I mean, it was like him trying to defuse a bomb, and he was down to the blue wire and the red wire, and he was going back and forth and trying to fix it. And people are running out of the building. They're being saved because he's taking his time, but then he snips the blue wire, and you should always snip the red wire. Always snip the red wire, and the whole thing goes kaboom. And so, yeah, he saved some people or some kids. Yeah, he probably did. But I tend to agree. I think that's the feeling that I get from it too. And it would even be interesting to see if somebody were to write, some sort of a sequel to Halloween 3, just to see what that would look like. Just to see somebody's interpretation of that.
I was thinking that as you were saying it, maybe rather than a reboot, you get sort of the hellscape that started in Santa Mira, and now Halloween is like the apocalypse day, and it holds kind of a different weight. Right. Yeah, absolutely, man. I think there's so much more to explore in this world of just Season of the Witch. It's why it's one of my favorite horror movies of all time.
Absolutely. No. What do you guys think? Are you fans? I'm guessing the majority of people who are watching this are probably fans. If you've made it through this entire episode and you don't like this if you don't like this film, we probably did nothing to convince you to like it. But I'm guessing if you're watching it up to this point, you're probably a fan. But drop us some comments down below. What's your favorite scene in this film? Let us know, because we'd love to hear about it. And obviously, we just love the engagement and interaction that we get with you guys. But yeah, man, Halloween 3 Season of the Witch.
Tell us too what you would want in a remake, because even just scrolling through the comments, I want to hear some fan theories, some fan predictions, about what a remake would look like.
I agree. Yeah, that would be cool. Like what could they do with this that could make it different but still follow the same storyline? I think that'd be really interesting. That's true. And I know, speaking of H45 and going to Lolita and all that good stuff, I'm really hoping, I mean, obviously, like Tommy Lee Wallace is going to be there. He directed Halloween 3. So it's going to be interesting to see if they bring in more of those Halloween 3 characters. I met Tom Atkins back probably 5 or 6 years ago. Cool dude, super, super nice dude. He was just like hanging out with fans at night, drinking MGDs. Like he was just a super, cool dude. And I would love to see him back, because I didn't get his autograph when I met him, and I'd love to see him get back. So hopefully they do have some of those characters as well. But speaking of Halloween 45, they've announced, I don't know if you've been paying attention, but they've announced a lot of people, and it seems like every week we're getting like 3 or 4 new guests. Dude, I'm going to have to I'm going to have to take out a loan at the bank or something, because I'm not you and I were texting the other day, and I'm not even joking. I'm literally probably, knowing what people charge for autographs, I could probably pay at least $1,000 right now to get all the autographs that I'm going to want at this thing. I'm going to be freaking broke. We're going to have to move in together, and we'll just be doing this, to maybe pay the bills, like whatever we got to do. So please support our channel, subscribe, follow. Because Austin and I might be broke. We might be living literally like just on a couch. We don't even know whose house we're living. We're just living on a couch. We're not allowed to leave. So yeah, Halloween 45, dude. I'm gonna spend a lot of money out there.
It's gonna be absurd. I think you and I could probably go live at mom and dad's again. It'd be just like old times.
True.
But yeah, it's gonna be insane. I gotta start budgeting it into my life. Luckily we got a little bit of time, but October is getting closer and closer. And Lord knows this podcast is going to have some really fun stuff happening in October.
We've got some plans.
Yeah, absolutely. And more Halloween 3 content. Absolutely come October. But yeah, man, it's getting closer. I'm keeping a close eye on the Instagram, seeing all the updates. We will see Dick Warlock, who was one of the,
that's robots. A good point. Yeah, that's a great point. Yep.
So that is a guaranteed Halloween 3, character. But yeah,
right.
I'd love to see Tom Atkins get in there and
that'd be cool. Yeah, no, dude. I'm excited. This is wrapping up episode 23. Like we said, we're only a few away from live 25. If you guys want to be a part of our first ever live show, it's going to be happening July 7th, 9 p.m. Eastern. If you want to be a part of it, send us your email address on Instagram. Go to @halloween.lives.podcast and send us a message. Give us your email address, and we will get you on the show. We'll chat that night. We'll talk about your favorite films in the franchise, why you love Halloween, why you hate Halloween Ends, why you like Halloween Ends. It doesn't matter. Everything is going to be on the table. And we're looking forward to it. It's just going to be a fun night. There's going to really be no time limit, no time restraint. It could be a 2-hour show. It could be a 4-hour show. We have no idea right now. The future is bright, and we have no idea what it looks like. So we're really excited. If you want to be a part of that, July 7th, 9 p.m. Eastern, hit us up on Instagram. And dude, I'm looking forward to it.
It's going to be a lot of fun, and I can't wait to meet some of the people that have said nice things to us on Instagram or on YouTube. It's going to be fun to talk with this tiny chunk of the internet that we've carved out for ourselves.
Dude, there was a guy the other day who wrote to us and said he's taking off of work that night, which is like, holy shit, you're going to burn vacation time to hang out with us. That's super cool. We're super excited. And yeah, man, I'm excited to hang out with like-minded fans, just like ourselves. So, that'll do it for episode number 23, not episode 3. Jesus. Episode 23 of Halloween Lives, the podcast of Michael Myers. It's been a lot of fun talking about this whole season of the witch thing and the craziness, the fun, the good, the bad, everything in between. So I'm Blaine Duncan. That's my brother, Austin. We'll see you next week. Thank you guys so much for watching.
My nipples aren't bleeding anymore.
Yes, they are.